Ross Tucker, Westwood One CBS Sports NFL and college football analyst and the host of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Also, social media at Ross Tucker NFL. He was on the call for the Giants and the Bills on Westwood One last night. How do you feel if you're the Buffalo Bills today, Ross?
I think you feel very, very relieved, Dan, because the Giants are down at the 1 yard line. Really, we could talk about the end of the first half for the whole segment, but then at 1 yard line at the end of the game, they have a couple opportunities there. I was in the stadium, obviously. Can you imagine if Waller catches that, or maybe they throw a pass interference penalty, Giants get another play, and then they score? Just the air that would have went out of that stadium. There's a huge difference between being 4-2 and 3-3. I think they feel very, very relieved and thankful that they escaped with a win.
The commissioner was talking about maybe London hosting a Super Bowl in the foreseeable future. Are we more likely to have a team in London first or a Super Bowl in London?
I think probably a Super Bowl, actually. I think there's a lot of logistical issues with putting a team over there. I think they're kind of dipping their toes in the water a little bit with having the Jags play back-to-back games over there.
Would you want to play in London?
As a player?
Yeah.
Absolutely, Dan. But I am the exception, not the rule, right? So, like, my wife and I have talked about that. I would have loved that. I mean, we have the perspective of it's a really short time in your life. Maybe it's a 2-year deal, 3-year deal. For me, it was a lot of 1 year, 1 year situations. So to be over there, heck yeah, man. I mean, when I played for the Patriots in the off season, my wife and I, every weekend, we went to Cape Cod or Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket. It was awesome, right? We were in our 20s. It was fabulous. I would have loved to have played for London, have that international experience for a couple of years. But to be fair, Dan, most guys are not like me. Most guys do not have that same perspective. Most guys have no interest in playing or living overseas.
How do you think the fans would react to a Super Bowl in London?
I think there'd be a lot of negativity here in the States because of the belief that, hey, why would there be a game in London when there's never been one in Chicago, when there's never been one in Philadelphia? I think you would probably get a lot of that reaction. And I understand that, but I'll say this, Dan, I'm totally in favor of it. And I'll tell you why. You guys know how I feel about football. Like, I love it. Like, I love it more than almost anything other than my family. Think about all of the kids around the world that play soccer and think that that's like the most fun sport to play. I mean, think about that. Now, I think soccer is great. I played soccer, Dan, from when I was like 6 years old till I was 11. It's a fun sport. But once you put a helmet and shoulder pads on and run into another kid and knock them over, that's the greatest feeling ever. You don't ever want to go kick a soccer ball again the rest of your life. I don't know anybody that played soccer, then played football, then went back to soccer. So anything we can do internationally to spread the game, I am big time in favor of, because I want more people internationally to get a chance to play it. Heck, I did the Vanderbilt-Georgia game for CBS on Saturday. 3 of Vanderbilt's defensive linemen are from Europe. One's from the UK, 2 from Germany. I think it's awesome. They are doing a good job of growing the game internationally.
Yeah, I just wonder what the reaction. Why would the commissioner bring this up? Like, there's no, coincidence. I mean, he doesn't do throw-ins and, hey, I'm just talking off the cuff here. Why is the commissioner bringing up the possibility of a Super Bowl in London?
I think two reasons. Number one, to gauge the feedback, right? So let's say you talk about it today, people call in and they're furious about it. I think they just want to know just how bad it would be if they ever elected to make that decision. The other thing is, I think it generates even more interest internationally about it, right? I'm sure that got picked up all over Europe, that the commission of the NFL says the biggest sporting event in America might get exported to Europe, and that's exactly what he's probably going for. I think it's smart.
We're talking to Ross Tucker, Westwood One, CBS sports analyst. What about Buffalo getting a Super Bowl?
Well, they're getting a new stadium.
That's
And
why I wonder.
usually-
Yeah, you build a stadium.
Yeah, it's kind of been a quid pro quo there, Dan, where it's like, all right, you guys give us the public funding for the new stadium, we'll give you one Super Bowl. Now, I know they don't like the idea of weather impacting the game, but then that doesn't bother me at all. First of all, I love football and weather like that. And secondly, could it be worse than the Chiefs and the Eagles sliding all over the place in the grass or whatever they were calling that out in Arizona? Now, I'll say this. I went to the Minnesota Super Bowl where the Eagles won and they beat the Patriots, and I'm glad Minnesota got a Super Bowl. For all the people that come to the game, it is nicer if you're in nice weather. I mean, seeing you guys last year in Arizona at that ballpark you guys are at, that's better than, freezing our butts off in Minnesota. That's objectively better.
Worst loss of the weekend by who?
Ooh. Well, I think on the NFL side, maybe the Eagles, just because, the Niners had already lost. So it was like the Eagles had that chance to get that game up on them. They were up by 2 scores against Zach Wilson and the Jets.
Yeah.
And to go -4 in turnover ratio. But I'm going to give you a different one, Dan. I actually think the worst loss of the weekend was the Colorado Buffaloes Friday night. I mean, because it was the only game on. They're up 29-0 at halftime. There's so much buzz around them. And because everybody went to bed at halftime, Dan,
yes.
It was
so did Colorado.
I know, but it's so funny because it was like the thing everybody had the exact same reaction when they woke up Saturday morning. Like, wait, what? They lost? it continued the conversation for all of Saturday morning until the next game started. And so what had been sort of a feel-good story is now they've lost however many games, and now they have a really bad loss on their record.
Best win of the weekend?
Cleveland Browns. Okay. Cleveland Browns, yeah. I mean, first of all, they have the best defense in the NFL right now. And I don't know that I can remember another unit or a side of the ball having a total 180. Dan, they were terrible on defense last year. Like real bad. And now they got the best defense in the NFL right now with the way they're playing, or certainly one of the 2 or 3 best. To win a game without Watson, to stay in the mix, this at least lets them. It's interesting, too, because I think the guys in Cleveland and in New York with the Jets are both kind of on the hot seat. I think they both need to win this year. So to win the way in which they did against undefeated teams, but I'll say Cleveland just because the Niners have been on so much of a roll.
The Browns have allowed just over 1,000 yards, the fewest by any team through the first 5 games of a season since the 1971 Baltimore Colts.
Wow.
Yeah. Pretty crazy there.
Yeah, I didn't know that stat. I was almost thinking, well, maybe the Niners defense no, I guess statistically, because I knew Baltimore had a pretty decent game against them, but that is very, very impressive. I wonder if by the end of the year, we'll be talking about Jim Schwartz getting a second chance to be a head coach.
Some guys just aren't head coaches. You know this. All of those New England Patriot assistant coaches. I mean, that doesn't mean you should be a head coach.
You know what, Dan?
Yeah.
It's a different job.
Yes.
It's a very different job. And I'm not saying this like Fritzy is great at what he does.
Good.
Paulie's great at what he does. Seton, Marvin, but just because Fritzy's the best guest booker out there doesn't mean he could go in your chair. I mean, that'd be amazing. I would love to see. I would definitely watch or listen to the whole episode if that happened. But that doesn't mean someone else will be able to make it the Todd Fritz show and have him be doing it much as everybody knows I love him.
Maybe one of these days Todd sits here and I'll sit over where Todd does.
That would be amazing. And so he can say, thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan. That would be good. Bigger game tonight for the Cowboys or the Chargers?
I would say Cowboys. They can't go to 3-3 and lose back-to-back games like this. I mean, with the visions they have, because then they'll still be 2 games behind the Philadelphia Eagles. They got to bounce back after that Niners performance. They have to. So I'll say for the Cowboys, but maybe that's just because they're the Cowboys and we all talk about them so much.
Always good to talk to you. What games do you have this upcoming weekend?
Yeah, likewise, Dan. Just some action on Saturday. I'm driving to Athens, Ohio. Never been there in my life. Western Michigan at Ohio U on Saturday on CBS Sports Network. And you know what? I love it just as much as Georgia Vandy on CBS or the Bills and the Giants last night. Like, I love it for all the reasons I love it.
Safe travels.
Thanks, man.
All right. That's Ross Tucker, a Ross Tucker football podcast, and available on social media at Ross Tucker NFL.